Okay, actually, that's my second book, and it follows on the heels of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. So,
Oh,
Soul Shift was my memoir after my son Brandon passed unexpectedly. It's really the journey and the thing that reignited my interest in my dad's field because even though I always respected my dad, I didn't try to be the next version of him. I didn't go down that path. I went the mainstream normie path and went to college, got a degree, got married at a young age, had a couple kids, and was really into my business career and focused on that.
Okay.
But I think sometimes suffering can be a catalyst for change in life. And
sure.
so the unexpected passing of my youngest son, Brandon, at the age of 18 was my catalyst.
Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we are back at it again for another episode of Living Life Consciously. Tonight, we have a very special guest lined up for you, and I am stoked to get started. So without further ado, Justin, say hey.
Hey there, Cosmic Truth Seekers. I'm Justin. This is Living Life Consciously, where we explore the extraordinary, ride the waves of inspiration, and embark on an adventure of limitless curiosity together. Leslie?
Hi, I'm your co-host, Leslie, also known as Light Being, Love, an eternal spiritual being having a temporary human experience. We are very happy to have Mark Ireland here with us today. Mark, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone. How are you tonight?
We are doing great, Mark, and thank you for joining us.
You.
And for our audience, tonight we are honored to be joined by Mark Ireland, best-selling author, consciousness explorer, and a powerful voice in the conversation around life after death and healing through grief. Mark's journey is deeply personal and profoundly transformative. After the heartbreaking loss of his youngest son, his search for meaning led him beyond traditional ideas of death and into a world where science, spirituality, and lived experience intersect. What he discovered not only changed his understanding of consciousness, but reshaped the way he views love, connection, and what continues beyond the physical body. Growing up as the son of a well-known psychic medium, Mark was exposed early on to concepts many of us only encounter later in life. But it was through loss that those ideas took on new depth and urgency. His work now bridges research, personal experience, and compassionate support for others navigating grief, especially parents searching for signs, hope, and healing. And tonight's conversation will explore what happens when grief becomes a gateway to expand awareness, how evidence and intuition can work together, and why the continuation of consciousness may be far more accessible and comforting than we've ever been taught before. Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was a great introduction. I appreciate it. I don't know if I can live up to it, but I'll do my best.
Oh, I'm sure you can live up to it. That's every word I meant it. So it's definitely for you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Alrighty. And my audience knows that I'm a creature of habit and I usually like to start at the beginning. So as I mentioned in your intro, you've had a pretty interesting childhood considering you grew up with a world psychic dad. So can you tell us what it was like to have a, famous psychic dad as a father and what your childhood was like?
You couldn't get away with much. So, Dad pretty much knew what was going on all the time. I think a couple of my favorite stories involve my older brother, who his efforts to have beer bought for him when he was underage were thwarted, along with his drag racing exploits. Then my mom and dad, when they were first married, this is probably my favorite story. She had been working on being a vegetarian for a few months, and this one day, though, she's just craving a burger, and she goes out and gets a hamburger and comes home that evening, or comes back, and then later that evening, my dad comes home, and the first words out of his mouth were, "So Shirley, did you enjoy your hamburger today?" So that's kind of what it was like, and he told us that he wanted us to have a normal childhood, so he didn't use it all the time to the full extent, but he pretty much was aware of what was going on. So, but I guess the rest of it is I really was intrigued and was proud of my father. I got to see many of his demonstrations in public venues, television show sets, at his own church. He had a very progressive church called the University of Life.
Okay.
that he established in 1960. He really came out of the spiritualist churches. His first gig was as a traveling minister for the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, and that's really how he met my mom in 1956. While he was in Phoenix, the pastor of that particular church had a dance the night before my dad was to speak and do his demonstration, and they set him up with my mom, and they hit it off, and so that's
Oh,
what
I
happened.
love a love story.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, me too.
unfortunately, it didn't last. They divorced after
Oh,
a number of years, but
they
it
had
was good
you
while it
and your
lasted.
brother, right?
Me and my sister, yeah, and then
Oh.
my
Sister.
older brother was adopted from my mom's first marriage. But
Okay.
so I would just say I saw demonstrations, and they were, he was phenomenally psychic in terms of clairvoyance, telepathy, psychometry, all the various facets. But also, I think the thing that I appreciated the most was spirit communication, which, if he's in a secular venue, he was not really focused on doing that, but it would pop in from time to time, and he would say, "Oh, I've got Connie here. This is your aunt, and she was talking about she loved to bake apple pies, and the two of you used to go on swing sets together. All kinds of details like that." And you'd see the people tear up and how it really touched them. These specifics, along with the names, were very helpful and healing to them. So from that young age, it's like, okay, there's something more here. We're not just this body and a brain.
Right.
Something about us goes on. I didn't understand exactly how all that worked, but it gave me a level of confidence. And more like a lot of folks have fear of death, or they're relying solely on blind faith through their religion or whatever. I felt like I had something beyond that, kind of a knowledge, an experiential knowledge, even though it was secondhand with my dad there.
Right.
It really, I think, helped me live a healthier life in terms of not being so consumed by fear.
Right. The term that's coming to mind is like street smarts, but I feel like I want to upgrade that to like spirit smarts.
yeah.
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 I saw your dad on a video. I was, of course I had to look into like who he was. So it's really neat. He was on like a show. I'm sure you know the name of the show, but where he had put all these like tapes on his eyes. It was crisscrossed, and there was 3 different blindfolds, black ones and then he was making jokes about what other people would say previous times, so he was like stuffing tissue or something and he was really funny about it. But yeah, the way it reminded me, I want to say it's called Mindsight, or where they have the school with the kids that are putting this big thing on and they're able to read.
9-year-old Yoga Mata is one of many children who went to Gurukul, India, and are now demonstrating the same power.
Can you see what face I'm making at you right now? You don't think it's funny? So I'm going to write something on this paper, and you'll read it to me, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's say I'm only writing one word. Can you tell me what this word says?
Love.
Wow. Pretty amazing. And now, if I draw something, can you see that?
Yeah, I'll tell you and I'll draw it again.
And you'll draw it again?
Yeah.
Okay. So here we go. I'm going to draw. I'm not a very good artist. You're probably better than me. Okay, here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's a tree. It's like a Christmas tree.
Exactly, a cedar tree. Here you go.
Oh,
now.
it's a cedar tree.
Yes, and now you'll draw it for me, right?
Yeah.
And you can't see anything
No.
with your physical eyes.
Yeah, with my physical eye. Then here's like a stump.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 1, 2.
Oh my gosh, you're doing each piece of grass exactly the same.
Then like this.
Even the, oh wow.
And 1, 2, 3 dots.
Wow. You didn't even draw just the grass. You drew it exactly the way I scribbled it. You're like, easy, right?
And telepathy tapes. Like those kids could also, like, their parents were reading a book and the child was able to like read, I don't know, but all of that. And I don't know how familiar you are with all of those things that I just
I've
mentioned.
seen some of those videos. I don't know that much about them, but you know, his blindfolding was about as extreme as you could get. There's just no way he could see, and it really didn't matter. It was overkill, because if you got your paper, you know, and he says, okay, I've got Diane Schuster here. She's asked me about whether or not she's going to sell the house. Well, no, I don't think she's going to sell the house, at least not for a couple of years, but you've got a new job offer and I think you should take it. And your uncle you came to visit you. Isn't that right? Yeah. And, you know, stayed a little too long, you know, so he'd just go off on all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that people would do is actually take like a dollar bill or a $10 or $20 bill and wrap it up and send it up in the paper with the question. But then they would, you know, retain the serial number, and then he would tell them the serial number on the bill.
Oh, wow.
So that's a long thing too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've been in this business for a long time, and I've worked with a lot of people to do mentalist acts, and I don't think it's telling secrets out of school to say that most of them are demonstrations for entertainment. But in this case, what this man does just puzzles me completely, and of course fascinates all of us. Here is Dr. Richard Ireland. At this moment, as you can see, we have our ushers in the aisle collecting the notes from the members of our audience. We thought it was important that you at home see that so that you don't assume there's been any trickery in the handling of the cards. They are being picked up at this minute, taken directly from the people who have just filled them out. Therefore, it follows that Dr. Ireland cannot have seen them, as indeed he could not have done so. And they're being picked up by a member of our staff here, who all of us have in plain sight. And of course you will recognize when you hear your own questions referred to. And as you'll see now, Dr. Ireland has begun perhaps we could even get a closer shot here on that activity, the task of covering up all the area around his eyes with surgical tape, which has for whatever the point is worth, the Johnson & Johnson label inside the little roll here. And
would you like to verify I cannot see, Steve? Under, around?
Yes, that's absolutely clear. Again, could you get an even closer shot? Because I think around the country people think, oh, he's peeking someplace. No, this is all covered and it's right down here tight against the nose. So there's obviously no chance for light to get through there.
And will you tie me some bow knots back here?
All right. And this is a real thick blindfold. We checked these too, the three of those, as a matter of fact.
It's amazing that even after I've put all this on, that certain skeptics who simply won't be convinced are inclined not to believe even then.
Huh. Well, I'm generally skeptical about such things, but you sure covered me the other night.
That's in case anyone thinks the holes are all lined up. Or that if, in fact, I might be peeking, and if the papers could be brought up here now, we'll get involved with those in just a moment.
Marty, if you... Oh, they're already here.
The other day I was accused of peeking out of here, Steve.
Yes, people actually have developed... They'll make up any theory to avoid thinking that...
Really, a lady told me that she thought I'd had a hole bored between my eyes and my nose and I could see out of my nostrils. That's the truth. Yeah. And I want to say hello to Alan now. Alan like Debias, or Debias. Labas. Are you there, Alan? Did we get an answer?
He's up, yes.
Okay, because it seems to me as though apparently you're not from this area. Would I find you originally from New Jersey?
Yes.
Would it be Lodi?
Yeah.
And now you live in North Hollywood?
Yeah.
And it seems as though that you make a lot of mistakes when you write, and you've crossed them all out, and it looks really bad.
Yes.
Yes. And I do feel as though that apparently you want to know about someone else, so you're afraid that they're going to turn out to be an old maid. Is that right?
Yes.
I don't believe that you have to worry. Sharon's going to find herself a husband, all right?
Thank you.
Is there someone here with the name of Bob? Thank you, like Lindholm. Lindholm.
Yeah.
And Bob, it seems to me as though that you didn't come alone this evening. Did you bring a girl with you?
Yes, I did.
Yes. And are you and her sort of having a scrap or something?
No.
Well, I feel as though that you asked me on your piece of paper, does my girlfriend really like me?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Well, I think she really likes you. Is her name Kim?
Yeah.
You didn't put her name on your paper, did you?
No.
See, and I don't know you, do I?
No.
I just want to tell you that Kim really likes you.
Dr. Ireland, the panel, our guest members here are so impressed with what you're doing, they've asked if they could...
What's this?
That's funny. Just reached in my pocket and took out...
A $5 pound note?
Yeah. Wow. That's fantastic, because a while ago, Frankie Kapp, our drummer, remembering that the last time Dr. Ireland was on the show, he did something fantastic in identifying a $20 bill and giving the serial number. Frank said, I'll fix him. He's going to England in a couple of days. He said, I've already got some English money. This will fool him. And he didn't even, he reached in my pocket and took it out. That's pretty scary.
And so one of the places he worked starting in 1967 was a place in Phoenix called the Stein and Sirloin. So it was a restaurant with a lounge area with a stage. And so one of the owners of that, Tony DePrima, who's still alive today and a friend of mine, he's 80-something.
Shout out, Tony.
Yeah. Tony said, when my dad first started, they had hired him as entertainment, not knowing if any of this was real, and they were skeptical. So they tried to trick him, and what they did several things. One was while he was blindfolded and everything, he would, answer a question on a piece of paper, fold it up and throw it in a trash can. So they'd sneak up there and move the trash can to see if he'd, and he would adjust every time and drop it in the correct spot. But the thing I thought that was most impressive, on 3 occasions, they took a $20 bill, wrapped it in foil, put that in a sealed envelope, and then said, tell us the serial number without opening this. And all 3 times he successfully gave them the serial number. So that was just like an added layer of, proof or evidence to that whole thing. So, it was really interesting. And he knew a lot of celebrities. He counseled Mae West. I got to meet her when I was 19. She was pretty far along at that point, but I got to tour her Beverly Hills apartment, which still looked like it was 1929 inside.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. And my dad was a character. So he, we were touring her bedroom, and he says, my son here, would you mind if he sat on his bed so he could say he's been in Mae West's bed?
Oh,
She said, sure.
he's got jokes. He's got jokes.
Oh, that's awesome. Were there any moments where he helped you realize your own intuition or psychic awareness?
He always said I was very psychic. He had told his friends that, and I'm like, Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't do what you do. But I didn't realize at the time, like can be a subtle thing, and maybe you're getting feelings or impressions or things that guide you, and you don't even realize it's external or it's coming to you. I'll give you a couple instances. One, when I was 18, I had this girlfriend, and I had a dream one night that she was seeing another guy. But the funny thing was, I knew his physical description and his first and last name. So the next day I said, hey, I had this dream about you with this other guy, and it kind of made me jealous. And she said, well, tell me about it. And I said, well, it's just a dream. Don't worry about it. She goes, no, please tell me. And I'm like, okay, well, the guy looked about, 6 foot tall, dark hair, kind of skinny. And his name was Bob Dooley. And she goes, oh my God, I dated a Bob Dooley in Kansas that looked just like that, and before I moved here to Arizona. So that was pretty kind of mind-boggling. Not that it meant anything or whatever.
I just thought about parallel lives. I don't know, but
maybe. Yeah. Or I was just picking up. I think just picking up from that energy or whatever.
Right. You picked
get
up
more information.
Yeah.
Another time, I went to see my father do a demonstration at a club, and after he'd finished the first one, he had a second one to do. He had like a 45-minute break. And he says, oh, Mark, I'm so tired. I can't do another one. And facetiously, I stuck my hands out and said, Dad, give me the power and I'll do it for you.
Give me the power.
He put his hands on mine and he says, okay, you have the power now. What's that stranger's name? He pointed out a stranger in another booth. What's his name? And I just knew, like, Alan. So somebody else in our booth My dad says, well, ask that guy his name. So he taps him on the shoulder, said, excuse me, sir, what's your name? And he goes, what? He goes, well, just tell us your name. He goes, Alan. So then that gave me a sense for what it felt like. And I've had that kind of thing again and more recent experiences too. But I would just say the way it came to me is just like a thought drops in, thought or an idea drops in. Didn't hear it, didn't see it as a written thing. But for me, anyhow, that's how I got that piece of information.
Interesting. I've been wondering this whole time when you were describing your dad's demonstrations and whatnot, was the term remote viewing used back then, or was that like not a thing yet?
Pre-remote viewing terminology.
Okay,
So
I
he
was
was
wondering.
basically doing remote viewing before remote
That's what
viewing
I was
a thing.
thinking. I'm like, this sounds like remote viewing when he's like looking at something in an envelope in real time.
I was thinking the same thing.
But
Yeah.
see, now we're on the same.
But it's like with more than just that. It's also like the mediumship aspect too. I guess.
Yeah.
I think, remote viewing is just a clinical name for clairvoyance at a distance. It's clairvoyance. So that's my opinion. I will tell you, though, that I never knew my dad did this, but I was contacted by a number of years ago by Glenn Wheaton, who founded the Hawaiian Remote Viewers Guild. And he had been in the military, and he had put together this organization to train people how to do remote viewing, to get contracts with the U.S. government back when the government was doing that kind of work. And he told me that he and some of his compatriots had gone to see one of my dad's demonstrations in Honolulu, and that they thought, wow, that's pretty impressive, but I don't know if this is for real. So let's talk to the guy after the show. And they said, hey, would you, here's who we are. Would you be open to coming to our place and let us do a little testing on you? And he said, sure. So they took him out there and they ran him through some tests, and they took like a paste, he told me, and they pasted all over my dad's eyes so that if he did anything, it was like a plaster of Paris or something like that, I think it was flour based, but it would crack and they would know that he'd peaked. So anyhow, they did this, and then they ran him through this bunch of different tests to see what he could get. And it blew their minds. So then they kind of quizzed him to find out in depth, like, well, explain how this works for you. How do you get into that state of awareness? How do you get the information? And so from all that, they built protocols to train people. This is what Glenn's told me. And he also said my dad had a contract with the government that was one of the most phenomenal sets of results that he'd ever seen. And it involved, apparently, based on what he told me, my dad identifying the location of some POWs in Laos, and even giving like dog tag numbers of the guys that were in there. So
wow.
I can't, I'm sure this is classified. I don't know. I haven't really looked into trying to get those documents. But that's what he told me about it. So yeah, it would be a natural fit for what we call remote viewing now. That was definitely one aspect of things he could do, but there was much more. And I know some great mediums today and really good psychics, but I've never seen anybody with that full range of ability like that.
Right. I'm wondering if he ever crossed paths with Joe McMoneagle. Are you aware of Joe McMoneagle? They call him Remote Viewer number one.
Yeah,
I wonder
Joe's
if your dad ever worked with Joe.
Well known. I don't know, because my dad never mentioned a word of this.
You couldn't even tell me if they did, I'm sure. But that's okay. I'm just thinking out loud.
Glenn said my dad had to sign an NDA with the government. So
sure.
My dad never told me a word about any of this. I learned about it years after my dad had passed. So
really?
And it's all based on what I learned from Glenn Wheaton. And there's another gentleman named Dick Algeyer in Hawaii who learned under Glenn. And I don't think he ever met my dad, but he learned my dad's protocols, and he had heard a lot about my dad from Glenn, who had founded that organization. So that's an aspect of my dad's life that I really didn't know anything about until they reached out to me. And I think it was like last fall, they asked me to go there, and they filmed their own documentary for their own organization. That's kind of cool. If you're interested in that later on, I can try and see if I can get you a link to that. However, it's pretty extensive. Sure. They did a whole conference. Absolutely. It's like several days of, multiple interviews and things, but I'll see what I can do for you later.
Okay, great. Thanks in advance.
Yeah.
I had a thought about your dad, and you said his parents knew it when he was 3 or 4 or something like that. But did they believe him, and that way he was able to grow his skills, I guess you could say? That's what I'm wondering. The same thing with you. I mean, I do feel like maybe everybody can do these things. It's that society, religion, all the things kind of like our parents are quick to say, no, you know.
They program it out of us,
Yeah, they
basically.
deprogram you
Right.
away or they program you away from it.
I'm wondering how his parents were, and obviously they were very open with you because your dad was a famous psychic or whatever. But
Well,
so yeah.
Actually, think about it. My dad was born in 1932, so like in the late 30s, when he's 5 years old, it wasn't an accepted kind of thing.
What was he doing at 3 and 5 years old?
Well, I'll tell you. So at like age 3, they lived in rural Ohio, didn't have a telephone, didn't have TV or any of that stuff. And my dad would say, "Grandpa's coming." And every time he'd say Grandpa's coming, within like this 5 to 10 minute range, Grandpa shows up. And it got to the point where they would start planning meals around when my dad said Grandpa's coming.
Oh, wow.
One time he says, Grandpa's coming and he won't have his beard. And then his older brothers, who were pretty cynical, said, "You're crazy, crazy Dick." They called him Crazy Dick for Richard. And Grandpa loves that beard. He'd never shave that off. So Grandpa gets there and the beard's gone. And it's like, well, what happened? Oh, he was making taffy and the beard got in the taffy. He had to shave it off.
Oh, no.
But that's so interesting. Your dad knew that like in advance.
The breakthrough event really was when he was 5 years old. He was born cross-eyed. So he went to the Children's Hospital in Columbus for corrective surgery. And after that surgery had been completed, they had his eyes covered, cupped and bandaged, and they had him restrained to a bed so he wouldn't mess with it. And his favorite nurse came by and she felt sorry for him and said, "Look, I'll let you out, but you have to promise me that you won't touch the bandages." And he agreed. So she left the room and went on her rounds, came back and found him bouncing a ball against the wall and catching it. She thought, "Oh my God, he's ripped the bandages off," but he hadn't. Then the nurse brought in some other doctors to like, "Hey, check out this weird kid, look at this stuff going on." And the doctors did some other tests, like put him in his bed, and then had one doctor stand at the foot of the bed, another in the doorway. The one in the doorway would say, "Okay, who's standing in front of you now?" And he'd get it right every time. So that was kind of the early stages of it. And then, as my dad got older, he would make predictions and things that would come true. Like one day, I guess he predicted the death of a townsperson or whatever that happened. But his father was not supportive at all. In fact, they had a pretty rough relationship. And I think my grandfather was just ignorant about it because he'd say, you shouldn't say things like that. It might come true. Like it had some power over what happened instead of he's just predicting what's going to happen. But his mother was more supportive and gentle, but they ended up divorcing. So he ended up living with the father most of the time. And, but he had a good relationship with his grandmother, his dad's mom. So I think really the breakthrough event for him, though, other than, the thing I mentioned about the hospital, when he was 12 years old, he lost his best buddy. Melvin McCarty was the kid's name. And the two of them were playing in a creek one day. And the mom had called for Melvin to come because they were going to drive into town to go see a movie and have dinner. And so Melvin leaves the creek and says, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow, Dick." And my dad says, "No, tomorrow you'll be dead." And my dad didn't even mean to say that. It just blurted out. It just came out of him. And then some other kids had heard him say that. And then early the next morning, they were throwing rocks at my dad's window. My dad opened the window and found out that Melvin had died the night before. Him and his mom had been in a car wreck and died. But here's the good part of that, though, going forward. My dad stumbled into a spiritualist camp one day at the age of 12. And he goes in the front door. He's curious to find out what is this all about. And they hand him a piece of paper and a pencil. And he says, "Well, what do I do with this?" And she says, "Well, you can write a question." He goes, "Well, I don't know what to ask." And she says, "Well, just write a message, please, and then write your name." So he did that. And then he turned the paper in. And up on the pulpit was this man who put all these tapes and blindfolds on. And so the man got my dad's question or my dad's paper, and he says, "Young man, Richard Ireland, he says, someday you're going to be doing what I'm doing right now." And he says, I've got someone from the other side here, and he gives me a secret name, and that name is Paisy, Well, my dad and Melvin had code names for each other. They were just secret names that no one knew. And Melvin's name was Paisy.
Oh,
Whoa.
So at that time, my dad's like, encouraged, blown away, but very intrigued. And so that particular minister ended up mentoring my dad years later. Initially, they didn't want my dad. My grandmother was supportive, grandfather not, but he was advising my grandmother not to rush my dad into that at the age of 12, 13, but to wait until he was like at least 17, 18. So that's kind of like what happened. She kind of kept that at bay for a while. But my dad dragged his younger brother, my Uncle Robert, and his mom into that spiritualist church to, I guess, see what was going on and to understand, what these capabilities were like and what this kind of more than just a blind faith approach was like. And my grandmother was very interested in it and actually later became a trance medium herself.
Wow.
Wow. After she supported her son through it, she then herself became open to it and worked with that. That's so cool. I love turnaround stories like
Right. That's amazing.
yeah.
And my grandfather, who never supported it, though, when he was on his deathbed, my dad wrote him a really beautiful letter that's actually at the back of my newest book, The Persistence of the Soul, and basically comforted my grandfather immensely. I know my other Uncle Robert was in the hospital with him, and he would say again and again, Robert, read Dick's letter again to me. Would you read Dick's letter again? Over and over. I'd read it to you now, but I'll start crying.
Aw. Well, I'm glad that you brought up your book because that gives us the perfect, segue transition to ask you about it. It is called The Persistence of the Soul, right? Do you have a
Right.
copy? Do you happen to be able to show?
Here's the
Yay,
picture.
there we go. The Persistence of the Soul. And it says mediums, spirit visitations, and afterlife communication. So when did that book come out? And tell us something about it.
Okay, actually, that's my second book, and it follows on the heels of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. So Soul Shift was my memoir after my son Brandon passed unexpectedly. It's really the journey and the thing that reignited my interest in my dad's field, because even though I always respected my dad, I didn't try to be the next version of him. I didn't go down that path. I went the mainstream normie path and went to college, got a degree, got married at a young age, had a couple kids, and was really into my business career and focused on that. But, I think sometimes suffering can be a catalyst for change in life. And so the unexpected passing of my youngest son, Brandon, at the age of 18 was my catalyst. The younger of my two sons, Brandon, was born on September 30th, 1985. Brandon was just a really good-natured young little kid, very friendly, very outgoing to embrace other children, and really never judged anybody. And as he got older, those attributes stuck with him. When Brandon turned 12, he started taking bass lessons. His brother Stephen had taken guitar lessons, so he just felt like he wanted to have his own instrument. And he was very dedicated to it. He had a lot of natural aptitude for playing the instrument. He got really, really good at it. In addition to that, he liked the outdoors. He liked to hike in the mountains and the desert. December 2003, I'd started a new job and was traveling throughout the state of California with my boss for a week. I came home on a Friday night, drove home, and as soon as I got there, the first place I went was straight to my son Brandon's room. Now, 9 times out of 10 on a Friday night, he'd be gone out to the movies or whatever with friends. But I opened his door and there he was lying in bed watching TV, propped up, and a big smile came across his face. So I went over and gave him a hug. And we didn't even say a word to one another. It was just kind of a homecoming sort of thing. Highly unusual, but very touching and in retrospect, very important to me. The next day was January 10th, 2004. I had gotten up, made my coffee, and Brandon was in playing his bass, and he was on the computer. And then I went in and joined him with my guitar, and he on his bass, and we practiced a few songs. And then shortly thereafter, he made mention of a hike that he and some friends had intended to go on. And I started just feeling uncomfortable with this idea of the hike. And it actually got to the point where I felt, and I don't claim to get
have visions or unusual paranormal type events take place, but I felt this kind of overwhelming feeling of like an energy. It was a feeling of impending danger, and it could even potentially take his life. And just before he left for the hike, the last thing I had said to him was, "Brandon, please don't go on the hike." And he said, "We're going, Dad."
A couple of friends had invited me to go hiking for the first time, hadn't hiked. And we also noticed some teenagers off in the distance were ahead of us. So we immediately were like, we got to beat them to the top. So we kind of had this little competition thing we were thinking in our heads. But along the way, we just periodically saw the teenagers, and it was Brandon and his friends. And we were almost to the peak, and we noticed we could hear real faintly off, like a, help, like real faint. We all decided, hey, something's really wrong. We should go help. I saw Mike, and he had already gone over, and I noticed there's somebody laying on the ground, and he was waving and said, I could hear him say he's not breathing.
My phone rang, and I thought, oh, good, because I had left a note on the counter asking Brandon to call us when he returned home. But the call wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from my other son, Stephen, who was at work. And his message really shook me to the core. He said that the other boys who were hiking with Brandon were trying to call us at the house, but we weren't answering, so they called him, Stephen, I mean. And that Brandon apparently hadn't been feeling well and had been passing out on the mountain, and they needed help. We got in our car and started coming home as quickly as we could. It was a good 40 to 45-minute drive. And by the time we got up to the neighborhood at the base of the McDowell Mountains, there were a horde of spectators, ambulances, even helicopters and fire trucks. The first person we were introduced to was a chaplain, and that didn't seem like good news to me. And it was probably within 20 minutes of that we were informed that Brandon had passed, which was a devastating thing for us and for any parent to go through. It's beyond words that I can use to describe the pain that we felt and the sense of despair at that moment. One of the first things that came into my mind after learning that Brandon had passed was I wanted to talk to my uncle and see if he could pull through any information, because he had the same abilities as my father. My uncle said, "Your dad said that Brandon's death was caused by a lack of oxygen that caused his heart to fail." Well, at that point in time, we did not have any results in terms of what had happened to cause Brandon's death. And it was within the week later on that I spoke to the autopsy physician, and she described the cause of death as a severe asthma attack that restricted his breathing, decreasing his blood oxygen levels, causing cardiac arrest. So my uncle was able to accurately confirm that validation or that information before the autopsy was even conducted.
And brought me down this path. So as hard as that was, it's resulted in a lot of positive things in terms of, not just my life, but my kind of learning at a deeper level. And also, like the co-founding of Helping Parents Heal, which we could talk about later, an organization that's helping over 30,000 parents who've had kids pass. But the persistence of the soul is a deeper dive. So where the first one, it's really a chronicle of the unusual experiences we had after Brandon passed, direct personal kind of experiences, but also through mediums, from Alison Dubois, who is famous for the show Medium, the real Alison Dubois. Discovery Channel feature I was in at the University of Arizona doing a test reading with a medium named Laurie Campbell under blinded conditions.
Today, Dr. Schwartz is testing Laurie's unusual powers using volunteer sitter Mark Ireland.
The first question is, what does the deceased look like?
Child, I keep seeing brown hair because I keep feeling like I'm looking at outdoor pictures. Capturing a child outdoors.
Can he show you what was his cause of death? How did Brandon die?
God, I feel like the air is just like sucked right out of me, like my chest, my whole chest area. The weird thing is I feel like I want to throw up. It's like, and I keep seeing a tree planted. So I feel like there's things in his name or his honor. I don't know if it's a plaque on a wall.
After the reading, Laurie discovers how much of what she's seen is true.
Was there, by the way, a tree or something?
Yes.
There was a tree?
His school planted a tree as a memorial with a plaque there.
Wow, school with a tree and plaque.
She even accurately described Brandon's death due to an asthma attack.
His friend and him didn't realize it was asthma because the symptoms were different than any other asthma attack he'd ever had. And he did throw up just before passing away. I'd say Lori's accuracy was in the 70 to 80% range. It may end up being higher after I go back through some of that and take time to look at the names and things.
Some other readings, and but this one, it gets into this whole subject matter at a deeper level, and I touch on some other things. So it really, some people that just want the warm, fuzzy stories, the first book, they're going to like that more.
Okay.
The people that are maybe a little more science-minded or they're open-minded skeptics, they might appreciate the second book more. So I'll give you some examples. I do have a chapter, first off, I start with some really good evidence from a medium friend of mine that occurred. And this was, I think, a good evidentiary instance of something that could there's allegations that mediums get information through telepathy, like from the sitter. They're reading their mind. So this one kind of validates that couldn't have been the case. So I'll tell you just real quickly, in this instance, a friend of mine from Sacramento, California, she was trying to reach out to me one day. I was at work. I got an email from her, but I couldn't reply because I was busy at the time. But it just said, my brother died. I need to talk to you. And eventually I gave her a call and I said, hey, what can I do for you? She goes, well, my brother died unexpectedly and I'm just at wit's end. He's my best friend. He was in a motorcycle accident today and he died. And so I said, you know what? Let me do this. Ironically, I'd already set up a meeting with a medium friend, Deborah Martin in North Scottsdale. And so I said, I've got to leave for this appointment and I will call you back later today and we'll talk more. And she goes, okay. And so anyhow, I thought, how ironic. I'm going to see a medium the same day this friend's calling me for help.
Right.
And so I drive up there and I get there. And the reason I was going was because I had inherited a manuscript from my dad that I didn't know existed. And I was going to get it published. It's called Your Psychic Potential, A Guide to Psychic Development. But anyhow, she felt she was getting information from my father that he wanted to make sure was in the book, like in the preface or the introduction. So anyhow, I get to Debbie's house. I'm like, it's really strange for me to be here today because a friend of mine, her brother just passed. And Debbie says, well, it's no coincidence because I'm supposed to talk to her. I said, okay, well, do you want me to call her right now? She said, no, I don't have time. Let's do our thing with the book. And then, I'll connect with her later. So we did our thing. She wanted to give me information about the preface to the book. And then we discussed that. And then I said, okay, do you want to call her now? And she goes, I got to go pick up my daughter from school, so I can't. But she says, why don't you and I just sit down now and see if I can get anything? And so she took a pad of paper and she goes, okay, what's your friend's name? I said, Linda. She goes, okay, what's the brother's name? I said, I don't know. And I didn't tell her anything more than a friend's brother passed. I didn't say how or anything that I knew. I just said those two things. Okay. And immediately she says, well, this involved a motorcycle and he died instantly. His soul left his body immediately. He didn't suffer. He wants her to know that. And that much, but I didn't know the rest. Then she went on. She says, well, he's showing me like a red banner or like a ribbon. And I think it went over his casket. And he says, thank you for the change of the music. And then she says, he brings up the little kids, something with the little kids and bathtub or taking a bath or something about that. So there's a few other things, but anyhow, I didn't know what any of this stuff meant.
Right.
And so after we left, I gave her contact information so the two of them could talk later in the day, which they did. But then I immediately called my friend Linda. I'm driving back to my office. I said, okay, Linda, I spoke to Debbie and she immediately got that your brother died on a motorcycle. And I didn't tell her that. So, that was pretty wild. And I said, she brought up something about a red ribbon his motorcycle buddies bought this red ribbon that went over his casket and it was like their gift to him. Oh. And at the funeral service, we changed the music. They were going to play country western. He hated that. He liked hard rock. So we changed it to hard rock. And the little kids actually, for a few years, he had a drug problem. So we took his kids. There are 3 of them. and they were specifically called, we call them the little kids, literally.
Okay.
And their favorite activity was bath time because they would have bath wars with their toy boats and stuff. So anyhow, none of that I knew. So she couldn't have read my mind. So I thought that was a great introduction. So that's early in the book. I just use that as a case in point for, a really good example of quality mental mediumship. I also get into a chapter about skeptics, the difference between an open-minded skeptic and just a cynic or somebody who's got a closed mind, basically materialists who won't change their mind,
Right.
And our organization deals with them too. And a lot of the mediums I know deal with that because they're coming from a standpoint where they think they know everything. They think they understand reality. Like there's an objective reality out there. It can be observed and the consciousness is in the brain. It's, nothing more than that. So it's just physicalism. And
religion could play into that too. Not only
that's the flip side. Yeah, I have a chapter on that too. But the first one I address is really the skeptics, those types of skeptics. And the chapter is called The Skeptical Neurosis. So we really talk about that. And I give instances where some of the people who claim to be skeptics, but they're really dogmatists. They're just dogmatists for atheism and for materialism. And, I've explained some of their tactics and some of the games they've played and stuff like that. But it's not so much to challenge them because I don't really care about changing their way of thinking. It's not going to be something I'm going to be responsible for, but rather so that open-minded skeptics will not fall for those tactics and will keep their mind open and to look at the evidence themselves and also weigh in their own experiences.
Right. We deal with a lot of skeptics in the UFO world too.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you cover a wide range of subjects and they're all probably considered woo. So
we hang out under the woo umbrella all day long.
Another chapter, I interviewed 2 psychic mediums. I was trying to get at this, like a lot of people might be interested, and I was interested because I wanted to know more. Like, when you say you see this, what does that mean? When you say you hear this, what does it mean? How do you get the information that you're sharing? And so both of them had a little bit different ways that they get the information. One's in the mind's eye. Another might be external. They can actually see a spirit in a way. Maybe it's translucent or something. When they hear, more often than not, it's really not an auditory thing. It's a name or a word pops in, just like I described earlier. So I interviewed these 2 because I think it really gives a good insight to like, how do they get the information? What is that experience like for them? And I've been actually kind of practicing lately. I went to a workshop myself and I've been doing some stuff because I want to understand that at a greater level. I don't want to necessarily go out and commercially be a medium and charge money for that. I'm just doing it, I wouldn't say as a hobby, but as a learning experience.
As your own personal understanding.
Yeah.
A learning endeavor for yourself.
Yeah.
Love
and
that.
we can talk a little bit more about that in a bit so I can explain what some of those things have been like that have been pretty profound and surprising.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a chapter called Psychic Phenomena and Mediumship in Religion and History.
Oh, Leslie called that.
Yeah. And so, but I kind of, I touch on a variety of religious backgrounds, Buddhism, Hinduism, and how these things are perceived in those faiths, the Eastern faiths, also Islam, just briefly, and the monotheistic faith, Judaism. But I focus the most on Christianity because in this country, that's the predominant faith. And that's where a lot of the pushback comes from, which is really surprising. As you'll note in my chapter, if you read that, it'll arm you with a better perspective on that. First off, if you do read it literally, most of the condemnation of things like mediums happens in the Old Testament, like in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. These are books that also condone slavery and say slavery is okay and you can will your slaves to your kids. And by the way, if you have a disobedient son, you should take your disobedient son to a neighboring town to be stoned to death. So when you see the parallels here, you soon realize that these were cultural norms of a time long ago, and probably are not divinely inspired. But then if you shift into like the New Testament, you've got Jesus talking to dead people in the story of the Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah, who, come up basically from the afterlife and speak with him according to Scripture, in sight of some of his disciples. And the story of the woman at the well that he's talking to her, and she, she's talking to him about things, and he says, "Oh, you've had many husbands, and the man you're with now isn't your husband," and all this. And she says, "Oh, clearly, so you're a prophet." And then, where it's in John, he's quoted as saying, all the works I do, you shall do, and greater works than these if you believe in me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in I think the most extensive touching on this subject is in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, which is the Apostle Paul's writing, and he talks about the gifts of the Spirit. And when you read what those are, they're identical to these phenomena. The gift of prophecy, the discernment of spirits, all these kinds of things. So I think what's happened is that traditional, and especially fundamentalist religion, has retracted itself into this box, and people just believe what they're told. They've never really read scripture themselves or interpreted it. They either gone to like a Bible study thing where they're told, "Oh, read this and read this and read this, and here's what it means," or they're just hearing what the pastor has to say. Usually, most pastors don't even touch on this stuff. They stay away from it. But if somebody asks about it, then they might say, "Well, you shouldn't dabble into that," So I think the thing is, you do have to use discernment if you start doing these practices, because we have murderers in this world and people with dark energy, and when they pass, they're still there. And it's not like they became suddenly enlightened just because he crossed over.
Right.
So I think for me, there is a darker side too, and you need to be aware of that. But I would say that all the people I know, they're all from the light. They're out to help people. And I can see that healing take place, and that tells me they're doing good work. Anyhow, so that's the chapter on religion. Anyone that is interested in this stuff, but either has some sort of fear, you might want to read that. Or if maybe you have these abilities and your family challenges you or they give you a hard time, read that and arm yourself with the information. Information is key.
Love that. Yes.
I have a chapter on reincarnation. When I was 3 years old, my dad and I were in the car driving along. And I only know this because he recorded it down in he had a book that he had published in 1970, but this whole story he saved. We were riding along in the car, and I was up against the car passenger side door, and he goes, "Mark, scoot in. I don't want you that close to the door. I'm afraid if it opens, you'll fall out." And then I said to him, "Well, then I'd be broken up into a lot of little pieces, but then the angels would come and take me back to heaven. And I wouldn't cry anymore. But then they'd make me a new body, and they'd make me have to come back down here." And he says, "So have you been here before?" And I said, "Oh, many times." He goes, "Well, how old were you the last time you died?" 83 years old.
Wow.
Did you have any brothers or sisters? I had 9 of them. So this Q&A took place. Today, I obviously have no recollection of this, but the people who researched this.
How old were you again?
I was 3.
Wow.
Yes.
So the people that research it, like at the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies, they found like kids that remember these past lives, typically those fade by age 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, part of it's just social conditioning, and it's just it fades away after that time. But so I have a chapter on that, and so I talk about that experience, but I also then talk about who the people that research it and what the findings. Like Ian Stevenson was a key figure with that. You get these stories from indigenous tribes in either South America or Africa, and he would go there and say, "Okay, well, this kid, he's 5 years old. He said that he used to be a man named Isaac, and he lived in this other tribe, and he was married to Beth, and he died from a spear to the chest, and lo and behold, the kid would have like a birthmark where that spear would have hit."
Yeah.
He goes back to then he goes 200 miles to the other tribe, interviews them, and finds out, lo and behold, yeah, there was a man by that name here, and he did have a wife named Beth. I'm giving goofy names. A tribe
sure.
Beth, but and then these facts are all verified. Like, oh, he had this family, and there were this many people in it, and he was stabbed by a spear that way. So there's a lot of that research in there. So I touch on that.
Love that.
I'm giving you like Reader's Digest here because
I'm here for it. Keep going.
Yeah, if anybody who wants to know more about this, they can research those individual things, pieces of information themselves.
Sure.
So if you want Ian Stevens' research, you could read his books. But I'm giving pieces of stuff.
Sure.
And really what I'm trying to do here with this book is give an overview of a lot of different pieces of information that point to consciousness surviving physical death and actually being primary. The physical is what's transient. It's what comes and goes. It's the consciousness, the soul that goes on. I've got some of my own personal experiences, a chapter called Unfoldment. And I've had more since then. Like I said, I've gone to this workshop and I've been doing some practice readings. I have a chapter called Robin's Flight. So my sister Robin contracted cancer in 2005, and she passed it was the night of Thanksgiving, November of 2006. And so prior to her passing, I asked her if she would be interested in trying to do an experiment where she would write a secret phrase down, put it in a sealed envelope, and we would just save it until after she had passed. And then her job then would be to try and convey that information, whatever she'd written down, to a group of mediums that I would contact after the fact. So that whole chapter is about that experiment and what happened. And then I talk about another experiment that's something left behind by Dr. Ian Stevenson. I'm working on this right now, but he said a very complex experiment. Before he died, he took a combination lock and locked shut like a locker thing, and it's filled with stuff. No one knows what's inside.
Okay.
But to unlock the lock, you have to have the right combination. So he left a key decoder behind to equate letters to numbers. And so a medium or anyone who could somehow relay his phrase or phrases correctly would be deciphered into 6 numbers that will open that combination lock. So that one's a little more complicated and pretty tough, because what I would tell you is it's either got to be a 6-letter word. It could be more than, it could be 7 or 8, but only the first 6 letters would count. Or it has to be a 6-word phrase with the first letter of each one counting.
Okay.
If he did that, that's going to be very, very difficult to get, no matter how good a medium is, because usually, like I've said, the medium communication comes in images. You might get a word or 2 or a phrase. It's like putting a picture together, a mosaic together.
Right.
So it would be very difficult to solve something like that. And I don't think that he probably knew enough about mediumship or how it works or he would have maybe taken a different approach. If it's a single 6-letter word, then that's a little more achievable, Right. But anyhow, it's about that chapter, how I found out about it.
Okay.
I then have a chapter called A Reading to Remember, which at that time was the best reading I'd ever had with the greatest evidence. And it still holds up to this day. And then I have a chapter on how to find a credible medium. In fact, more than 10 years ago, it's almost 12 years ago, I started a certified medium program, and I have a website. So I test mediums under blinded conditions. They have to conduct 4 readings on Zoom with no video. They're only given the first name of the sitter, and that's not given until right at the time of the reading. And then the reading's given. It's transcribed then, and the sitter who received the reading has to score it for accuracy, for evidential statements, and then an overall subjective score. And based on that, there's a pretty high bar they have to pass to get certified through the average of the 4 readings. The reason I did that was because after my first book came out, I had a lot of people saying, hey, I really want to get a reading. Who should I go to? Right. And at that time, I knew like maybe 4 to 6 really good mediums, but they were like celebrity mediums. And they were, had long wait lists, and some were expensive. So I thought, there's got to be more people that can do this that are just lesser known. And so now today, 12 years later, I've certified over 50 of them.
Really? That's a lot.
It's a very small percentage that pass, though, because I have a high bar. And the reason I have a high bar is because it's grieving people that come to me, and they, they're very vulnerable, they're fragile. So I can't guarantee you're going to get a good reading, but the odds are greatly improved if you have somebody who's been vetted like that.
Sure. What's one insight you wish everyone could grasp when navigating grief or searching for signs from lost loved ones?
Well, tackling grief is a deep subject, and there's a lot of aspects to it. If someone goes for therapy, that's great. I think that, Dr. Julie Baishu, who runs the Winbridge Research Center, she's, through research found that combination of evidential mediumship with therapy is far more impactful than therapy alone. I think, as far as people having signs of their own form of communication, I would say, it's going to be subtle, so don't disregard it. That's the hard part of it, though, really, because if we get something, we think, is that real or is that my imagination? But if it comes from somebody else, like a medium, and they don't know that, about your loved one or whatever, then it's going to be tangible. Now, they could say, they love you very much, they miss you, whatever. But if you got a piece of evidence before that, like, they said that you carry their favorite keychain, which had a Scotty dog on it. And if that was true,
That's
then
so
you'd be like,
specific.
wow, then then you can accept that they love you very much statement,
Sure.
So like even with the grading of the readings that I do on my certification program now, I've shifted away from just accuracy and more for evidence. So like you could say, okay, you have a grandma on the other side, and she said that she liked to bake. Okay, well, that could be accurate. It's not really that evidential. Most grandmas bake. Well, but if you said grandma baked apple rhubarb pie on Thanksgiving, okay, she did. That's evidential. So that's kind of the difference.
Right. That's very specific.
I know I feel I'm doing all the talking here, but let me give you an example of something I did personally after my son passed that gave me that kind of direct connection, even before anybody else. And so I wanted that experience. I went into a darkened walk-in closet, turned off the light, sat on the floor, tried to quiet my mind and just ask for whatever come to me that would, to connect with my son. And within a reasonable period of time, I saw his face like scroll across like this in my mind's eye, and he was glowing. I felt joy. It was like radiating. And then I thought, well, that's cool. But then I could have felt like, okay, well, that's what my mind wants me to have to feel better. But then that scrolled by, and the next object I saw was a cross with an oval loop at the top. And I thought, I've seen those, but I don't know what they mean. And so when I was done, I had to go Google it. I wrote cross with oval loop at the top and found out that's the Egyptian Ankh, which is the oldest cross of human history. And the
Eternal
lower portion
life, right?
represents physical life. The oval loop represents eternal life. So I got a coded message, and that helped me believe it even more. Because that's something I didn't know. And I had to look up to see, well, what does this mean exactly? Also, a year and a half later, I really wanted a connection with my son. And before going to bed one night, I asked for a dream visit, and I asked to be able to remember it. And that night I had one. And it's the only time I've had dreams with him, but this is the only time where this was as vivid, more vivid than waking reality. And I cherish that forever. We were in a 3-walled room in the middle of the universe. It was all white. 3 white walls, and he was sitting on what would be almost like a counter, but it wasn't a physical place really. And where the 4th wall should have been was infinity. It was like the rest of the universe. And so we had our little visit, And what's really remarkable about that is about 6 months ago, I think it was, a woman wrote to me, and she'd read my first book, Soul Shift, where I explained that dream visit. And she said, she had a dream visit where she met her son in a 3-walled white room in the middle of the universe. Wow. And she always wondered if it was real. And then when she read her email said page 139, Soul Shift, or what page it was. And she says, now I know it was real. So that was pretty crazy to get confirmation like that,
Yeah.
So we've been gifted with experiences beyond what most people would have. But, don't discount like the effect on electronics. You could get some wacky stuff. We've had like after Brandon passed, our stereo came on in the middle of the night, blaring the exact music that Brandon used to love playing,
Awesome.
Or the flickering light kind of thing. It's fine to be skeptical to the point to say, okay, is there a rational explanation for what happened? But if you've already gone down that path and there's not, then hey, just appreciate it for what it is.
Sure.
People have told me they've gotten text messages, that was from the name of the loved one that passed and things. I haven't had that happen, but
we know somebody that had that happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out Silver Girl. I'm sure she'll be fine with us telling her story, but basically I believe, forgive me, Chris, if I'm telling your story wrong, but I believe her grandfather passed, and she got a text message from him in Italian. like the language that he spoke, like the text came through in Italian.
I remember her saying that.
Right?
Yeah.
It was like a specific phrase that he always used to use with her when she was a little girl growing up. So it was like confirmation on top of confirmation on top of confirmation.
Yeah, and then
Mi chiamo Marco, mia vole.
oh,
Mi piace moltissimo. Something like that. I just speak a little Italian, not a lot.
Awesome. And then speaking about electronics, Leslie, every time she drives under like most of the time, she drives underneath like a lamppost or something, or a street light, and it flickers.
Yep.
Right. I mean, she can tell her own story, but
the questioning he just hit you with reminded me of something that happened with my 7-year-old granddaughter just a few weeks ago.
What was that?
So I was in the garage before she got here, and I found a envelope with some old pictures of my sister that I'd not seen before. That, wow, I wonder why these are stowed away. I've never seen these pictures of her. So then an hour later, my granddaughter's here, and she's on a scooter. So we're going around our neighborhood, and she says, Pop, I want to get a driver's license. I said, okay, well, you have to take a test. Look, you have to parallel park your scooter, and then now you have to fill out the information. How tall are you? What do you weigh? And what's your birthday? And she says, April 16th. I'm like, Lily, that's not your birthday. Your birthday's May 21st. I said, what made you say that? And she goes, I don't know. I just felt like saying it. That was my sister's birthday.
Oh, okay.
April 16th. So it runs in families.
With her. Yeah. So do you think she's a little psychic too? Just a little medium?
Probably.
Mediumship ability there?
Well, we'll see what happens, in the future. But it does, the people that research it do say it runs in families. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I definitely have stuff with lights, but I had what you might call a after death communication. ACD, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
But
ADC.
So I had a miscarriage, early on in a pregnancy in between my two that I have. But long story short, when I did start to have my awakening, I guess you could say, I near-death experiences was a big thing for me. And hearing about people's testimonies of going to the other side and coming back basically to tell about how they saw their loved ones, all the things. There's so many things to that. But it would have been about 5 years after that loss of what would have been my child. So it would have been, I guess, like a 5-year-old child at the time. But long story short, I had multiple, I mean, at least probably 8 to 10 occasions throughout maybe 6 or 8 months or something like that. I felt like it's how long this was happening for, but only so many instances. But it would be in my car by myself, and I would feel like what would be a child's foot pushing into the back of your seat.
Oh, like they're kicking the back of your chair.
Yeah. And so I was really open to angels because, through near-death experiences, we learn that we have guides and angels, and we all have them. And anyway, but something in me, because of the way it was, and I feel like that was also a way to let me know, possibly, that it was my child that was just coming to say hello. And then also I had an experience with my grandmother when she passed, because at this point I was fully aware that we are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And and she, died of old age. But I had this discussion with her where I wanted to do a test, what, Grandma, what are you going to come back as to say hello? I want to see if I see signs or whatever. But so she just thought I was silly, and was like, you're silly. So I ended up naming some things. I think I said something about a butterfly, and then a cardinal, and these are all signs that are already known. So, I mean, I was kind of new into my whole spiritual journey and everything. But yeah, I do believe my grandmother visited me through a cardinal on my porch. It was the wildest thing. It was nighttime. The cardinal was there. It was a female cardinal. And it was just acting very bizarre, and I've immediately thought of my grandmother, and I went out there, and the bird landed on my head twice. Okay, it was just a wild experience, and when a bird normally wouldn't even be there. But so that happened. And then this might be wishful thinking, but I did want to mention, and I'm talking a lot now, sorry, but that, I was listening to some videos. This is off of my stories now, but I was, listening to a video. I think I watched Suzanne.
Geisman.
What is her name? Geisman?
Susan Geisman.
Doing that.
Yeah, so you did a video with her that I was watching. But
Susan
anyway,
Geisman has her own podcast too.
That's who we're talking about.
Yeah, she's great. I love her.
That's who she's talking about.
Yeah. So anyways, but and then I did watch another one, Grief to Growth or something, with another gentleman. I was watching some clips of that.
Brian
but anyway,
Smith.
you were talking about your son. And although I do get signs when I'm like preparing and thinking about our interviews that we're going to have with our guests and stuff, I do see things that happen. So, I mean, that's not out of the ordinary to see like angel number or whatever. But I saw like a license plate. I'm listening while I'm driving to these things. But so I'm listening to the videos. You're talking about your son. I see a DDD license plate, and I didn't necessarily connect it to your son or anything like that. But I was like, oh, it's 444. I'll take it, because D to me translates to fours because it's the fourth letter or whatever. But,
right.
So I'm like, okay. And then literally on the opposite side, right after that, and they were talking about your son, I see 444, and I'm like, ooh, what if like his son is it Brandon? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Brandon.
Okay, is trying to like, send a message. That'd be so cool or whatever. But either way, I don't know.
Well, what you got actually sounds very close to a nickname of his, which was BBD.
Oh, really?
BBD. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so maybe he was saying hi, and I was like picking up on it. So I'm gonna give you that message.
Cool.
It was actually, you talk about the license plate thing. I've got one of the freakiest, if I could, I have to find it though, that I've ever encountered. It was on the 10th anniversary of his passing. And the reason he had the nickname BBD was because he had two middle names, Brandon Blake Donald Ireland. Brandon Blake Donald. And the reason that he had that is because we wanted to name him Brandon Blake, but we had 3 Donalds in the family we had to satisfy. So we gave him 2 middle names. So on the 10th anniversary of his passing, I went out to lunch one day, and I went in. I was going to go to like a strip mall to a place to get a bite to eat. While I was on my way there, walking to the restaurant, I just happened to see this license plate.
Wow.
You'll see
what are
not
the
only
chances
BBD,
of
but
that?
10.
Yeah.
BBD 10.
10th anniversary.
Anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, the odds have to be in the millions.
Exactly.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
I'll share another picture here. This is about something more recent, but I told you I'd done some experimental. I did a practice reading for a really top-notch medium named Farrah Gibson. And I asked her, I just said, this is a little intimidating for me, but I want to do I'm doing practice readings. Do you want to be a sitter for me? And she goes, oh, sure. I've never had a reading before. I said, really? She goes, no. So we had set up a time to do this. And it was a couple days before I was pulling my car into the garage, and I thought, oh, I got to do that for Farrah in a couple of days. I hope I get something. And as soon as I thought that, this idea or knowledge or what image came to me, and it was a pie. And then I got, no, not just a pie, a cherry pie.
Okay,
so,
specific.
Yeah, so I wrote that down, and then I got a few other things before we even started. But I got her on Zoom, and I said, okay, I want to share some of these things with you beforehand. And I said, I got a cherry pie. I know it sounds stupid. She goes, oh my gosh. I said, what? She goes, well, before she had the session, she had sent out mental requests to her stepmom, who she really didn't get along with very well. But she says, you have to give me the very first thing that I get. And there's only one object that she ever received as a gift from that stepmom, and it was that.
Oh, wow.
A plate that says straight up cherry pie.
With a recipe.
With a recipe. Wow.
So that, conveyed to me again how subtle it is, because like the way I got cherry pie, it's not like cherry pie or, it was just like this very subtle cherry pie, and I just had to trust it and say it. And lo and behold, it turned out to be significant. So.
Love that.
Wow. I'm feeling compelled to tell you my story. And I'll try to condense it as much as I can.
Yes.
Because because I know we're running short on time here. But speaking of subtleties, so after my dad passed away, I started seeing all these signs, and all these signs led to me knowing that he's watching us. And like, all right, so some of the best signs were I had to help my sister get to the location of his funeral. So I paid for her plane ticket, and her plane ticket was $444. Right? Yeah. And then on the way, we were driving to there. Allie and I had to drive. On the way, my nickname that my dad gave me is Just in Time, because I was I was born just in time for something. I don't know. Anyway, so that's my nickname from him. And we passed a tractor trailer that had the company logo Just in Time.
And neither one of us had
and
ever
I'd never seen that.
Wheeler that said that before, ever.
Right, right. And then as soon as we got to the location where he was, my bank account was exactly $444 and whatever cents. And it was the exact same price as my sister's plane ticket, including the cents. I mean, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, it was angel number after sign after angel number after sign. It was just like things kept happening
and then
over and over again.
And then so we all three of us went on a retreat together, and we saw a bunch of dragonflies. We went swimming in this river in the mountains, and there was all these dragonflies that came and landed on us. And my dad always loved dragonflies. And so we took that as a sign of him. And then Allie and I also went to this concert.
Sammy Hagar.
And as Sammy is singing, he's wailing something on the stage. I forgot what song it was. A dragonfly came and landed on the microphone.
Like, bloop.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's gotta be my dad.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I have other hobbies too. I play in a band. I'm a guitarist. I write songs. So I'll have to send you links to some of my music. But
absolutely.
My original music is under the name The Mark Ireland Experiment. And it's on Spotify and Apple and all those.
Oh, I'm going to check it out.
And then my band, we go by Blown Cover because we're a cover band, but we'll throw some of my originals in too. So anyhow.
Okay.
Nice. Well,
awesome.
hey, wait, I'm gonna ride this wave right here because you're talking about links and where people can find you. So I feel like this is the perfect time for you to tell our audience where they can find you online, what kind of things you have coming up, and anything cool you have that you would like to share with them.
Sure. So my website is markirelandauthor.com. Mark with a K, Ireland like the country, author.com. markirelandauthor.com. Okay. And there you'll find links to a number of other things. So if you want to see some videos of my dad on my homepage, you could scroll down to the bottom. You'll see a link there to that. There are also links to the Certified Medium website that I talked about, the people who have gone through the testing and passed.
Okay.
And there's also a link to the Helping Parents Heal website. Helping Parents Heal is an organization that I co-founded with a woman named Elizabeth Boyson. We started this over a decade ago, and it's grown to, we have 31,000 members worldwide. We have 170 chapters, affiliate chapters worldwide, and we have a conference every other year that draws 1,100 people. It's a very healing event.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's something that was mentioned too about how healing it was. And Suzanne Geisman was saying how, other people will go into groups that aren't so much on the spiritual or, life after life, or however you would say that, aspect of things, and that you guys are. And I think it's great. And I can see how people would be able to heal and go through their grief in a better way, knowing that they'll see their loved ones again,
Well, that's the only reason we exist, really, is because the other groups wouldn't allow the open discussion of these things. And we're not coming from any religious or dogmatic position. Individually, we have different perspectives, but the organization allows the open discussion of these things. And then at our conference, we have people that, like Dr. Mary Neal, who's in the near-death experience world. We've had Dr. Eben Alexander on before to talk about his NDEs. We've had Raymond Moody. We've had, and in the mediumship realm, Gordon Smith is one of the top mediums in the world. He came from Scotland last time. We had James Van Prague.
Wow.
We will have Suzanne Giesman will be again at this one. We'll have a number of top people. So we provide all these things. People can take and choose what they wish. They can see what they want to see. We're not ramming anything down anyone's throat. But I will
Right.
tell you that the hope element is a big deal in the healing process. So, getting therapy is great. Having a supportive family and friend network is great. Learning how to serve others comes back to you. That helps you heal too. And letting go of feelings of guilt and feelings of anger towards someone you're holding responsible for your loved one's passing. You have, if you can get to a point of letting go, that helps. All those things together, kind of add up to a healing process. But the hope element is a big one. It really is, because it's otherwise, you're basically saying goodbye forever. If that's your mindset, you think you're nothing but a biological robot in a meaningless universe. And
thank you for doing that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And I know you were going over your book and the chapters, and I feel like we kind of sideswiped all that going into like all of our thoughts and everything. But so did you finish that list, or did you finish that off? I wanted to make sure before we just moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell you every chapter, but I gave you some highlights.
Yeah.
So, I talk about the science supporting it. I include, basically what I do is I give personal narrative and my experiences, and then I share the research and science supporting those things. And then I talk about all those various issues and topics, the skeptics, the science research, the religion aspect, the experiment with my sister. So that book was a lot of work putting all that together, because it wasn't just experiences. There's a lot of research in that book too. And then going forward, I will, I have one more I'm working on. It's still a ways away, but that one will be about what it was like for me to grow up with the father I had. And then, sharing. So many people have given me stories from around the world about him and his interaction with them. So those will be rolled into that too. And one chapter that I'm putting the most into is, I call it Purpose. And it's really a chapter about my thoughts about why we're here and what we're here for, and then correlate those to my dad's thoughts on those issues too. So that's kind of a deeper philosophical chapter, but there's going to be, a lot of the stories and things in there too.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to your upcoming work, and you have an open invitation to come back on our show when that book comes out. If you would like to talk about it with us, we would love to have you. And to put a button on where people can find you online, I also have a Facebook link for you, and you are also on YouTube.
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel. I've been on my website. If you go to the media page, again, markirelandauthor.com, the media page has a lot of other interviews I've done over the years. It also there's a documentary that some students at Arizona State University Cronkite School of Journalism did on my story. It's about 25 minutes long. It's pretty good production. This was done a number of years ago. There's a clip from Discovery Channel when I was at the University of Arizona for that experiment that Discovery Channel filmed. There's a clip, there's that on there. So there's a variety of things that might interest people there. I've got newsletters too, like an archive of newsletters. And so I try to provide a lot of information there for folks.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll definitely have your links up on the screen as you're saying them, and in the video description box below. So when our audience members watch this and would like to find you online and work with you, buy your book, whatever, they have that available to them. So thank you for sharing all of those things with us. And I feel like this is the perfect time for you to ask him our famous question.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of hope, yes, you were talking about hope a little bit ago. So we asked this of all of our guests. What is your greatest hope for the future of humanity?
I think, for us to ever get to a point to have peace, or like where we care for each other globally, the first step is really for people to understand the reality that you are a soul, you are a continuing consciousness, and you're not just a biological robot. And you're not just here to take all you can get while you're here and to gratify. People that live that way are not happy. They may think they're going to be happy from that, but they're not. They're miserable. So I think it's just to realize that, you're part of it. You're interconnected with everyone and everything in some way that I don't fully understand. And that the core essence of, I think, what we would consider God, not a bearded man in the clouds, but that source that the primordial consciousness is kind of one way I view is love. And that interconnection of love is what it's really all about.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Wonderful answer, Mark. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. That was a very good answer. I love asking people that because I feel like the most profound things or responses that we get involve love and peace and that the realization that we are all connected. We're all one. So you can't go wrong with those.
Yeah, if you hurt somebody else, you're just hurting yourself,
Because we're all just pieces of each other, of our, it's a fractal of the same source. So we're all just mirrors of ourselves. We're all just pieces of ourselves experiencing it from a different perspective. But ultimately, we all go back to the same source. We're all made from the same fabric, same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Very cool. Mark, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight and for sharing your stories. I feel the need to say I'm so sorry for the loss of your son. And if it's cool with you, I would love to dedicate this episode to Brandon, if that's cool with you.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your dad and your mom and your sister, too, because they all seem to be cool with this stuff, too. So I'll just kind of do a blanket Mark's awesome family kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And you guys, good luck with your show. I hope it grows and grows. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of interesting episodes coming up.
Yes. Thank you. We currently have a goal to reach 1,000 subs. So if we can manifest that, that would be fantastic.
Well, there you go.
Cool. Does anybody have any last pieces of advice or thing that they want to say before we close out tonight?
No, I just want to say thank you for being here and for doing what you do and helping all of the, parents who are grieving. I think that's a tremendous thing. And to let them know that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and that we will see them again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes sooner than we think.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was a little scary.
I didn't mean that way. I just meant
no, it's okay.
They're going to touch in. So
yeah.
Although you never
really,
know when your time
this
comes.
Life is literally, from my understanding, it's like a blink of an eye on the eternal aspect of things. So it is pretty fast, actually.
Well, you all take care. Thanks for having me.
So for our audience that's sticking around, thank you guys so much. Please do us a favor and smash that like button, click subscribe, ring our little notification bell, drop a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word. Okay, Mark, we do a 3-piece closer. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. And then if you are available to join us, that's cool. If you don't want to, that's cool too. What we do is much love, peace, and namaste. Are you down to join?
Sure.
All right, ready? Here we go.
Okay. Right.
Much love. There we go. Peace and namaste.
What you doing, Brandon? You're going in the water?